Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Kyle Carlstead, and to watch this video on Dovetail Corner you must have already watched and done your layout. After the layout is done, now we've got our pieces ready to cut. You can see on either side of the board we have MDF pieces cut and lined up perfectly with our depth. That is absolutely critical. So now that we've got them in the vise, we've got two pieces of MDF. We're going to make sure that those MDF pieces are perfectly square with one another. This will ensure that when we cut it, the shoulders will line up perfectly. Once that is completed, now we want to add some pressure to make sure we don't lose those shoulders. Make sure your clamps are deep enough so that they're putting pressure on the board itself, not just on the outside edges of the MDF. So please ensure it's well clamped in with C-clamps. Next, we're going to take a Japanese dovetail saw that does not have a spine on the outside, just a flexible Japanese saw. It is a very fine saw used for cutting, very detailed work. We're going to try to be right on the outside edge of our pencil line. I want to leave about 1 millimeter or whatever I think I can manage with my hand chisels afterwards. But to me, about 1 millimeter away from my line. If I go too close, I might go over that line and I won't be able to get the shape that I've drawn out. So the MDF shoulders are there. You see, when I place my Japanese saw down flat on the MDF shoulders, I put my fingers on either side where the MDF is to ensure that it's staying perfectly flush. So now when I cut with my Japanese saw, I'm making sure that I'm staying nice and flat with that edge. So now I'm coming back and forth, trying to just pop off that outside piece that I know that I don't need. Might take a little bit of back and forth. You don't want to go too deep, and it should pop off and sit nice and flat. Repeat on the other side as required. Once the second side comes out, all that's left now is to take and cut down as far as we can go. We can't scoop out the middle. Some people like to use a coping saw to cut that out, but I don't. I prefer to leave it right where it is. You can see the pencil lines have about 1 millimeter of material left over. So from here, my next step is to take a chisel as wide as I can get that won't pass over my pencil lines, and make sure it stays perfectly flat. And I'm going to use my mallet, and I'm going to make sure that I tap it nice and gentle just to hit those edges to make sure my depth is absolutely perfect. So I'm tapping it in, going in about 1 millimeter or 2 in depth with my chisel, going from one shoulder to the other. And then I'm going to take a smaller chisel and try to pop that piece out from the top side. So you see my chisel coming straight down, and I've scored it from the bottom side, so as I come down to the bottom, that piece should just chip right out and look really nice, creating that shoulder. Again, you want to stay perfectly 90 degrees on that shoulder so that those pieces will come out. Once I go for my secondary cuts, I do like to angle my chisel up a degree or two so that I'm coring towards the center of the dovetail. So the outside shoulders are going to remain perfectly flat because I did the first 1/8 of an inch. After that, I like to start coring towards the center. And we'll show you that a little later on in the video. So this process just carries on a little bit from the inside and then chip out from the top. And you're going to repeat that process for both of the pieces as required. Once you've finished about halfway in your depth, we're going to leave the C-clamps on, take it out of our vise, and just spin it right around. You'll see the whole point of this process is to ensure that those MDF support pieces stay square to my depth the entire time that I'm doing the cutting. So we're repeating the process, and what you're seeing here is just being very careful when it's almost the piece ready to pop right out. Sometimes I like to carve towards the center just to remove as much piece material as possible, and then it should just pop out very nicely, just a little bit at the end. Please take your time. Do not try to hammer your way through here, as it will rip out a lot of the material and leave a bit of a hole, nasty looking hole at the bottom. Take your time, clean out the shoulders, make sure it looks nice. It's a good time to check with a square across the shoulders. Check with your square to make sure. Once that's complete, then you may take it out from under the pressure, as our tails will now be ready to go over and begin the hand chiseling process. So you can see we've done our job. The shoulders are looking really good. It's square all the way across. And now we've got to remove that little bit of material left. I like to shear up and into. Please do not take your chisel and go straight across here. You will damage the outside edge. You see I'm coming from the bottom up ever so carefully. What I'm trying to do is bevel the material to my pencil line, just to get to my line. I will take and bevel all the way around all the tails to the pencil line. You see here, it is optional, but I prefer to do it this way. See those bevel lines from my chisel right to the pencil line. That way I know when I come back to my bench, I'm just removing the material that is left over, and I've protected those pencil lines, which I do not want any material to be removed from. So it's just a nice way of protecting it. When I get back to my bench, I like to just make sure I'm protecting those corners. So you see all I'm doing there is to protect that pencil line. And now I like to hollow the center out. This is just material we know is not going to be needed, and it just gets in the way. So I like to scoop a lot of that material out ahead of time. And then I like to take my wider chisel, one that will span both shoulders, and come across and take off the remaining amount of material. Once you get close, please check with your square going across from shoulder to shoulder, and that must make a nice straight line. Carry on, completing all of the surfaces that need to be flattened off all the way down to your pencil lines until you're happy with your tails. So here you can see we've got our tails completely finished, looking good, ready for the next step. Check with your square again before moving on. Every shoulder must be perfectly square. So here we're just laying out, as you refer to, your layout procedure for your pins. The process to do the pins is exactly the same. You use the MDF shoulders, you cut down with your Japanese saw, and you remove the material with your chisels. Once all that's complete, now you're ready to begin trying the fitting process. So we bring our tails to our pins, and we try to tap them in with a mallet. Make sure you use a mallet that won't damage. You don't want to use a hammer. You want to use a dead blow hammer if you can, or a protection piece on top if you're just using a regular hammer. When they fit down and in, you'll see this one fit quite snugly right off the bat. You may have to tap the piece in and out and remove more material as required. But as you can see here, if you've done your job right and you've cut to the pencil lines, it should turn out quite nicely. I'm sure you'll have fun and enjoy making your dovetail corners.